Jim, thanks so much for joining us today at this ACG 40th anniversary celebration. You've had an amazing career, over 50 years, 30 years of which was at McKinsey Company, 3 years as Senior Executive Vice President at KeyCorp, and numerous roles in industry as a CEO, as a director, and as an advisor to many businesses. So over the course of your career, you've had many opportunities to work with unique businesses. Is there a particular one that stands out in your mind?
The one that comes most to my mind is working with General Motors in the mid-'80s when the entire place was needing to adjust to Japanese competition, and everything about the way they did business, how they paid people, how their operating systems work, their organization structure, and everything was just not equipped for that competition and had to be rethought and readjusted.
Yeah, that's great. Is that the Sigma 6 belt? Does that come from that philosophy? Right?
No, that came later. That came later.
Over the course of your career, I'm sure you've experienced many obstacles. It's never a straight line. Is there a particular obstacle that you had to overcome that impacted you in a personal or professional way?
I've had the same obstacle all the way along, and entering new situations, as one does in a place like McKinsey, every few months, it is that I didn't know anything about the organization, or often didn't, and had no particular expertise to bring to bear, and so had to learn how to quickly build trust with clients or followers in the CEO roles, so that I could do my job effectively. So not knowing anything or not having that to fall back on was probably the biggest chronic obstacle.
Yeah, so being able to think on your feet quickly and learn an industry quickly.
That was half of it. That is, work harder than anybody else could in learning the place. The other part was establishing rapport and trust with my clients. When I started at McKinsey when I was 25 and a bartender and a lawyer who didn't practice law, building trust became my stock trade because I didn't know anything. And so I would connect with my clients on a personal level or a professional level as to what my being around could do to be helpful to them and what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so sort of having to parachute into companies. I'm sure you worked across a lot of different industries. Is there a common thread or common theme that you would pull out that's applicable across industries in terms of best practices and how to manage a business?
I'll probably be a bit monotonous on this, but the building of trust. Trust is the currency of business, regardless of industry, and building trust with individual people and having that rapport and being there to assist clients, to assist your colleagues at work to be as successful as they can be, just transcends any industry, any company culture, and so on.
Yep. We have a common saying in our industry, the relationship is the most important thing. And I think that goes from your trust comment. It's about relationships and people at the end of the day. And all of those drive to get a transaction.
Yeah, and yes, in the transaction, it's nice that you know commercial finance terms and market and so on, but at the end of the day, you have to get the deal done, and that really works for the client, your clients, and that they feel good about, and that's universal, I think.
That's right. A win-win. So I'm sure that you've had ups and downs over the course of a career. Careers are typically not, linear. So what were some of the things, or is there one particular thing that you would have changed over the course of your career?
I'll turn that question a different way if I could,
Sure.
and that is what I would not have changed.
Sure.
I decided I did not want to practice law at age 25. I didn't know what I was going to do, and McKinsey came along, showed up at Harvard Law School to interview for the first time in quite a while. I went to the interview and joined McKinsey with the idea of staying 1 year. I stayed 30, and it just happened to be a situation where, with my peculiar blend of weaknesses and some strengths, was a place that absolutely, for a large number of reasons, suited me, and I have often felt blessed that was the decision I made. I can't imagine not having spent the 30 years there.
It's amazing how one little decision in your life can change the trajectory of things.
I really planned to stay a year, took the bar, passed the bar, and thought, well, I'll be a lawyer or do something different in about a year or so. And of course, I was the fourth most senior person in the firm, just in terms of on the clock. So I left after 30 years, and I was number 4 out of thousands around the world in tenure. Yeah. So I wouldn't have changed that decision.
Incredible, incredible. So we have a great business community here in Northeast Ohio and Cleveland in particular. Can you describe how the business community has assisted you and maybe shaped your perspective on how to approach things, how to approach business?
I think when the business community has worked best for the community, and I guess selfishly for me, is when people have coalesced around getting things done, working together with political leadership when we've been lucky enough to have that rapport to set out goals for the community. And a number come to mind, but goals for the community, and then working together, pitching in to get that done. So the commercial side of it and earning a living is fine, but the business community has really been terrific at many points along the time I've been here to really move the community in total forward.
Yeah, so it sounds like, again, that theme of people, connecting people, and working together for a common goal is really what drives the business community and drives making our community a better place.
Well, in organizations like ACG, and I was thinking about what ACG and others alike do, it's to build that same theme, that social capital of relationships among individuals, which, yes, it's nice that there's professional interests that are shared within the membership, but what it does, many of these community organizations connect people across professional interests, across industries, and build the kind of fabric, and again, maybe overworking the term, social capital that provides an investment base for moving the community forward.
Yeah, that's great. So, nobody gets to your level of success on your own. Is there a particular mentor that you had, and did they give you any particular nuggets of advice that have impacted you?
Well, thank you for the question. I've thought about that a bit, and I've had a couple of mentors. I'll mention one in particular in a minute, maybe two. But mostly what they have done is bet on me at times when it was a bit of a risk to them or when I was struggling. I was a disciplinary problem in first grade, out in the hall a good bit, so I was skipped second, found myself in third and could not do anything that third graders could do. It's kind of passé now, but I couldn't write in cursive. And so I was deeply in a hole, and Miss May, my third grade teacher, stuck with me and helped me along the way in what was, in hindsight, sort of a life-shaping drowning that was going on. Similarly, or not similarly, but along the same lines, there was a managing director of McKinsey who bet on me 2 or 3 times along the way, career-wise, had me run the Canadian practice when I was 34 and a hippie with an afro, much over the objections of his executive committee and his colleagues, made me the head of the Canadian practice while I was up in Canada, and then was the one who said, come on down to Cleveland, and if you come here, pretty sure you will double the size of the office in the first few years. Yeah. So the mentors have not been so much the day-to-day coaching and doing this rather than that, but rather betting on me in times when it was looked like to many people a risky bet.
Yeah, and it sounds like they were there as a support system, but they gave you space to grow and really pursue your passion and not get in your way. No micromanaging, if you will.
It does go to a particular philosophy of my former organization, and I think I have tried to follow it myself, which is outstanding people, or people that have the intrinsic capabilities and talents. You never make a mistake by pushing them too quickly and letting them, as your question suggests, follow their instincts and follow their ability and get out of their way.
Outside of your professional career, you've dedicated a lot of time to charitable activities. Can you talk about what that means to you to give back to the community?
There are two or three things about it, reflecting on the number and variety of those. Most of them are selfish. One is that it's different than the day-to-day work to earn a living. So the personalities are different. The problems are often or usually more complicated to solve. There is then the feeling of gratification for having done something worthwhile and useful, and particularly when there's a good result and it moves the community ahead. Those are all selfish reasons, so I have felt good about having the opportunity to do those things. What also I've noticed is that colleagues, where in whatever organization I happen to be working with them in, the profit-making organization, feel attracted to the enterprise and wanting to be part of it because it gives back. So it's a great, I would say, team building or employee building thing to be doing as well.
Is there any particular community organization that you want to call out as being one of your favorite to support?
Well, I was lucky enough to be a director of the Cleveland Foundation for 10 years, and for a while the chair of the Consolidated Grant-Making Committee. So we, at that time, distributed $75 or $80 million a year on issues and problems that were really central to things going on in the community to try to make a difference. I guess it would be hard to top that opportunity to be involved for a decade working on the education issues, economic development, cultural institutions. It would be hard to top the Cleveland Foundation as the one dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit now to providing some advice for the future. Over the course of your career, you've seen a lot of changes in the business community. Administrations have changed, the culture has changed. What do you see as the biggest driving force, biggest driving change in Cleveland over the course of your career?
In terms of the makeup of the community, when I first came to Cleveland to work in 1968, went to Canada for 13 years, and came back in 1982, we were number 3, I think, maybe number 4 on Fortune 500 headquarters. This place just had a very different feel as an industrial center. A source of pride, a source of employment, a source of horsepower, than it does as it has transformed into a service-based town and service-based employment. It just has a very different sense of things, and it affects everything. So the company, there are fewer companies that with leaders who can devote themselves to civic things and have resources to move things ahead. There have been benefits, of course, to that, but that's probably the biggest snapshot change in terms of the character of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a big transition from the manufacturing to the service orientation. So what advice do you have for the next generation of young professionals who are coming up?
Well, this is, I'm sure, going to sound trite, and maybe so everybody says this, so maybe I will too. Coming out of college campuses in the mid and late 60s, I was in Cambridge when I was at law school. In the late 60s, when drugs came in and Vietnam protests were very, very high. And I guess going back before that, I always took the only thing that was really important was standing for principles and values. And I have been rewarded all the way along for the close to 55 years of work of standing up for what I believe in, being true to those values, and just not compromising on what's right. And I guess to underscore that trite or that conventional bit of advice I would urge any young professional to do. And the other one would be to really understand how to build trust with other people, whether it's customers, colleagues, people in your personal life. There's a real skill and art in terms of how one behaves and interacts to develop that currency as part of the way you do your work in your business.
Well, Jim, that wraps up our interview. Thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us, and thank you for everything you've done in your career and for the Cleveland business community and for ACG Cleveland. Appreciate it, Jim. Thanks so much.
You bet. My pleasure. Yeah. Nick, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah.